If any of you follow me on Instagram, you might notice that I almost always end all of my Instagram posts saying this one phrase, and I mean it from the bottom of my chest. I always say, remember, land back and reparations are the only way. And what do I actually mean by that? Now, if you don't know who I am, my name is Aisa or Turtle Girl. I am Black and I am Indigenous. I am Cheyenne, Powhatan, Blackfoot, and Cherokee on my mother's side. I am Black and I am also Creole from New Orleans on my father's side. I have ancestors who were enslaved. I have Indigenous ancestors who are indigenous to these lands, and I believe in land back and reparations for my people. Now, I've said this and I will continue to say this forever, but land back and reparations are so important to fixing what is this problem in this country. The fact that people are not willing to have the extremely hard conversations and the real conversations about the genocide and the enslavement of people on these lands 400, 500 years ago is the reason that we are never going to be able to ever come to any sort of liberation, peace, whatever you want to call it, on these lands. It'll never happen. And no amount of voting, no amount of electoral politics, no amount of the lesser of two evils is going to save us from this. That doesn't mean that I do not believe in voting. I think voting is important because our ancestors, my ancestors, your ancestors, Black, Indigenous people, they fought for our rights to be able to have the right to vote. So in that case, I am never going to tell people never to vote. But on the other hand, I want you to know that this two-party system will never get us out of here. And the reason I say that is because land back and reparations are the only way. What do I mean by that? So for Indigenous people, land back. Land back is giving the land back to Indigenous communities and tribes. That means that the land that they originally were stewards of, giving the stewardship back to the Indigenous tribes. Because the land is aching, I'm talking aching, for the Indigenous land stewards to take the land back and to be the stewards of the land once again. It needs the Indigenous people to be the stewards of these lands. When I say reparations, that means reparations for Black people, those who are the descendants of chattel slavery in this country. Both Indigenous people and Black people's blood, sweat, tears, and souls are in the land of this country. And every day when we continue to not talk about the real ramifications of Indigenous genocide and Black chattel slavery in this country, we are not being truthful to who this country really is. We have to right the wrongs that these dirty colonizers and slave owners did to these people. We have to right the wrongs. That is the reason this country will never prosper, will never ever be what you imagine it to be in your mind. It will never be this, because we have not come to the conclusion that we need to give land back to the Indigenous people and reparations to Black folks. When I say give the land back to Indigenous people, I do not just mean physically. I also mean culturally, spiritually, the languages. Give the land back. Give the culture back. Give the language back. So that Indigenous cultures can take back what is rightfully theirs and they can heal. Healing needs to be done. 100%. Healing needs to be done, and we need to be pouring into Indigenous communities. They are the only ones who will be able to get us out of any kind of anything that is going on these lands as we speak. Same with reparations for Black people. We need to be pouring into Black communities. We need to be pouring into Black communities. We need to be pouring into organizations that are doing the work for Black liberation. We need to be giving to Black communities. We need to be giving to Black-owned brands. We need to be giving to Black people doing the work. They are the ones that are going to be able to help us get out of the way that this country is now. If we are not pouring into them, we are not doing the work. If we're not talking about the atrocities that happen to Black and Indigenous people, we are not doing the work. If we are not learning about these things, we are not doing the work. And that is not helpful to anybody. And that is why we will continue to have the problems we have in this country. Land back and reparations are the two most important things that need to happen on these lands before we can ever go forward. And that does not include putting people in office who are not going to do those two things. If a candidate is not going to do those two things specifically, then they are not for the people. Because that is the only way we can fix this country. That is the only way. Because not talking about the mass genocide of the Indigenous people of Turtle Island and the mass casualties of chattel slavery, Black chattel slavery in this country, we will never, ever go forward. And to not give reparations and land back to Indigenous and Black people, we will never, ever be able to heal anything. And that is why this country will always, always continue to fail at anything it ever does. This is not just something that is political. This is not just something that is just, candidates this and politicians that. No, this is a spiritual thing. There are spirits on these lands who are still here, who are still in pain, in literal pain from the genocide and slavery that took place on these lands. And they don't get anything for it. And I know there are Indigenous people, and I know that there are Black people who do talk to these ancestors and who do remind them that we are here and that we care and that we are doing our best to try and to be there for them and to do what we can, but it is hard, right? And we, as the Black and Indigenous communities, need to talk to the ancestors more, those who are, gone, but also those spirits who are still here on these lands. We need to be talking to them more and telling them that we are trying our best and that we are trying to make sure that these things happen for us and the next generations. And this government needs to be giving land back and reparations to Black and Indigenous people. That is it. And that is all. And that is the only way we are ever going to get out of any of the mess that we're in right now. That is the only way. That is literally the only way. It has to be land back and reparations. It has to be the acknowledgement of genocide and slavery that took place on these lands. If not, we are going to stay in this muddled bubble forever, and we will never be able to get out of it. Land back and reparations are the only way.